There's a specific pattern in decision-making that distinguishes strategic operators from reactive participants. When faced with situations requiring choices, most people consult their feelings first. They ask, how does this make me feel? What emotion is this triggering? What does my gut tell me? Then they build their response around that emotional reaction. This seems natural. Emotions provide instant assessment of situations. Fear signals danger. Anger signals violation. Guilt signals transgression. Joy signals reward. The emotional system evolved to provide rapid response to threats and opportunities when slower analytical processing would be fatal. But here's what that system doesn't account for. Complex social environments where immediate reactions often work against long-term interests. Where appearing affected by something gives others leverage over you. Where emotional displays communicate vulnerability that strategic observers will exploit. Niccolò Machiavelli operated in precisely such environments. Renaissance Italian politics was a context where displaying emotional reactions to provocations could be fatal. Where letting others see what moved you emotionally meant giving them tools to move you strategically. Where the leader who could maintain composure regardless of circumstances held significant advantage over those who couldn't. He wasn't advocating emotional suppression in the therapeutic sense, becoming numb or disconnected from feeling. He was describing something more precise. The ability to separate emotional experience from behavioral response. To feel whatever you feel internally while maintaining external presentation that serves strategic objectives rather than expressing internal states. This distinction matters. Suppressing emotion creates psychological damage over time. Separating emotion from response creates strategic flexibility. The first makes you disconnected from yourself. The second makes you less controllable by others. Most people conflate these two different operations. They believe that not displaying emotion means not having emotion, that maintaining composure means being cold, that strategic presentation means psychological detachment. None of this is accurate. It's entirely possible, in fact, optimal, to have rich internal emotional experience while maintaining disciplined external presentation. This separation is a learnable skill, not natural for most people, but developable through practice. And once developed, it provides significant advantage in any context where others attempt to influence you through emotional manipulation. The question isn't whether to have emotions. It's whether to let others see and use them. Type this in the comments. I separate experience from expression. Every emotional reaction you display publicly is intelligence you're providing to observers. When they see what angers you, saddens you, excites you, or frightens you, they've gained information about your psychology that they can use to predict and influence your behavior. This isn't necessarily malicious, it's often unconscious. People naturally use available information to navigate social situations. If they know that guilt motivates you, they'll frame requests in ways that trigger guilt. If they know that anger clouds your judgment, they'll provoke anger when they want you thinking poorly. If they know that praise inflates you, they'll use praise strategically when they want compliance. Your emotional transparency creates this information availability. The more readable you are, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the more easily influenced you become. Not through elaborate manipulation necessarily, just through basic social navigation using the data you've provided. Machiavelli observed this pattern constantly. The leaders whose emotional reactions were well known became easy to manipulate. Opponents knew exactly which provocations would generate which responses. They could orchestrate emotional states strategically, knowing that certain emotions would produce certain behaviors. The leaders who were emotionally unreadable, conversely, were significantly harder to influence. Opponents couldn't reliably predict their reactions, couldn't determine what would move them, couldn't orchestrate their emotional states because the connection between internal experience and external expression wasn't visible. This created strategic advantage, not because they were better at suppressing emotion, but because they'd separated emotional experience from behavioral response. They felt things probably intensely, but their external presentation remained calibrated to serve strategic objectives rather than express internal states. This is different from being emotionless. Being emotionless means not experiencing emotional responses, which would be psychological pathology. Being strategically opaque means experiencing emotions without automatically displaying them, which is disciplined communication. The practical application is straightforward. Stop treating emotional expression as automatic. Currently, most people operate with a direct pipeline from emotional experience to external display. They feel anger, they display anger. They feel hurt, they display hurt. They feel joy, they display joy. This automatic display is what creates vulnerability. You're broadcasting your internal state constantly, providing real-time intelligence about what's affecting you and how. Anyone paying attention gains enormous information about how to influence you. The alternative is creating space between experience and expression. You feel the emotion. You register what's happening internally. Then you make a deliberate choice about whether and how to express it, based on whether that expression serves your interests. This isn't suppression, it's discernment. You're choosing what to communicate rather than automatically communicating everything you experience. In any interaction, the party that's more emotionally invested holds less power. The person who cares more about the outcome has weaker negotiating position than the person who's comfortable walking away. The individual who needs the relationship more is more easily influenced than the one who has alternatives. This is basic leverage dynamics. Emotional investment creates dependence. Dependence creates vulnerability. Vulnerability enables influence. Most people understand this intellectually, but struggle to apply it because emotional investment feels right. If you care about someone, shouldn't you show it? If something matters to you, shouldn't you express that? If you're passionate about an outcome, shouldn't that be visible? The problem is that displaying emotional investment advertises your leverage points. You've shown observers what matters to you, which means you've shown them what they can threaten or promise to influence your behavior. Machiavelli noted this repeatedly. The prince who obviously needs an alliance will get worse terms than the prince who appears indifferent. The advisor who clearly wants advancement will be exploited more than the one who seems satisfied with current position. The intensity of your visible desire is inversely proportional to your negotiating power. This doesn't mean not caring about things. It means not advertising what you care about to people who might use that information against you. Your emotional investments can remain private, while your external presentation remains neutral. Consider professional contexts. The employee who obviously desperately wants the promotion has weaker position than the one who seems satisfied either way. The salesperson who clearly needs the deal gets worse terms than the one who can walk away. The dater who obviously is more invested has less power than the one who has other options. In each case, the emotional investment might be identical. The difference is in what's displayed. The person who keeps their investment private maintains stronger position than the one who displays it publicly. This requires discipline. Your instinct is to show people how much you care as proof of authenticity. But in strategic contexts, that authenticity works against you. You're providing leverage to anyone who wants to influence you by threatening or promising what you've shown you care about. The strategic alternative is maintaining neutral external presentation regardless of internal investment. You care intensely about outcomes, but observers can't determine the degree of that care from your behavior. This ambiguity protects your position. There's fundamental asymmetry between what people see and what they experience when interacting with you. They see surface presentation, how you appear, what you say, what signals you send. They experience outcomes, what actually happens in interactions with you, what results you produce, how things turn out. Most people optimize for appearing a certain way without recognizing that appearance and operation are different systems. You can appear kind while operating ruthlessly. You can appear uncertain while being completely clear. You can appear emotional while being strategically controlled. Machiavelli was explicit about this. It's more important to appear to have certain qualities than to actually possess them. Not because appearance is more valuable than substance, but because appearance is what most people interact with. They don't experience your internal states. They experience your presentation, and your results. This suggests a specific strategy. Control appearance while optimizing operation. Appear, however, serves your strategic objectives. Operate according to what produces desired outcomes. These don't need to align. In fact, they often shouldn't. The leader who appears compassionate while making ruthless decisions maintains both loyalty and effectiveness. The negotiator who appears uncertain while being completely prepared gains information others wouldn't share with someone appearing confident. The competitor who appears less capable while being highly skilled catches opponents off guard. This isn't about deception in the moral sense. It's about recognizing that appearance and capability are different systems that can be managed independently. Most people conflate them, assuming that how you appear is what you are. Strategic operators understand these are separate channels that can convey different information. Applied practically, your emotional displays are appearance. Your actual emotional processing is operation. These don't need to match. You can be processing intense emotion while displaying calm neutrality. You can be completely clear while appearing to consider. You can be confident while appearing uncertain. The strategic value of this separation is that observers can't determine your actual state from your displayed state. They're guessing, and that guessing creates uncertainty that often works in your favor. The person whose appearance matches their internal state is transparent. The person whose appearance is strategically managed regardless of internal state is opaque. Opacity is power because it prevents others from reading and therefore influencing you. Every instance of visible emotional vulnerability, showing hurt, displaying insecurity, revealing fear, expressing desperation, is a data point observers can use to understand your psychology. Individually, these instances seem harmless or even authentic. Collectively, they map your emotional architecture in ways that make you predictable and therefore controllable. This creates a specific problem in environments where not everyone has your interests in mind. When you display vulnerability to supportive people, it deepens connection. When you display vulnerability to strategic operators, it provides targeting information. Most people can't distinguish between these contexts. They've been taught that vulnerability is universally positive, that showing emotional responses builds trust and connection. This is true in relationships based on mutual support. It's counterproductive in interactions based on competing interests. Machiavelli operated in environments where most interactions involved competing interests, where today's ally might be tomorrow's opponent, where displaying vulnerability could be weaponized later. His advice to maintain emotional opacity wasn't about being cold. It was about surviving in contexts where emotional displays could be used against you. The modern environment is more complex. Some relationships genuinely benefit from emotional transparency. Some don't. The problem is that most people use the same approach everywhere. They're either transparent everywhere or opaque everywhere. Neither is optimal. Strategic emotional management means calibrating display based on context and relationship. With people who've demonstrated genuine support, emotional transparency strengthens connection. With people in competitive or uncertain relationships, emotional opacity protects position. This requires assessment before sharing. Is this person trustworthy with this information? Do they have interests aligned with mine? Could this emotional display be used to influence me later? If the answers suggest risk, maintain opacity regardless of instinct to share. Most people struggle with this because it feels calculating. They want to be authentic everywhere, with everyone. But undiscriminating authenticity is just poor information security. You're broadcasting intelligence about yourself to anyone who's listening, without assessing whether they'll use it constructively or exploitatively. The alternative isn't being fake everywhere. It's being discerning about where you reveal what. Emotional transparency with trusted people who've earned it. Emotional opacity with everyone else. This isn't dishonesty. It's appropriate information management based on relationship type and context. Your emotional architecture is private information that only selected people should access. Everyone else gets the surface presentation that serves your strategic objectives while revealing nothing about what actually moves you. All of this collapses without one prerequisite: the ability to maintain composed behavior regardless of internal state, not as performance under normal conditions, but as capability under stress. This is fundamentally a discipline problem, not a strategy problem. Most people can maintain composure when they're already calm. The strategic value comes from maintaining it when you're not calm, when you're angry, hurt, frightened, or desperate. That's when emotional control matters, when there's actually strong emotion to control. This capability isn't natural for most people. The automatic response is letting internal state determine external expression. Upset inside means upset behavior outside. This direct pipeline is what creates vulnerability. Developing the ability to separate these requires specific practice, not just thinking about it or understanding it intellectually, but actually implementing separation repeatedly under increasingly challenging conditions until it becomes reliable. Machiavelli assumed his readers had this foundation. His advice on strategic emotional management only works if you can actually maintain external composure when internal experience is intense. Without that capability, all the strategy is just theory. You'll collapse into automatic emotional expression when pressure increases. This is where most people fail. They understand the strategic value of emotional control intellectually, but haven't developed the actual capacity to implement it under stress. So when situations become emotionally charged, they revert to automatic expression, because that's their only developed response pattern. The solution is treating this as a training problem. You develop the capacity to maintain behavioral control under emotional stress the same way you develop any capacity, progressive practice. Start with low-stakes situations, maintain composed behavior when mildly frustrated, then gradually work toward higher-stakes situations with more intense emotional activation. This isn't suppression. That would be trying to stop the emotional experience itself. This is behavioral regulation, maintaining composed action regardless of emotional experience. You feel everything. You express strategically. Over time, this becomes reliable. You develop genuine capacity to be emotionally activated internally, while remaining behaviorally controlled externally. That capacity is the foundation that makes strategic emotional management possible. Without it, all the understanding of why emotional control matters strategically is just knowledge you can't apply when it would actually be useful. Machiavelli's famous statement about fear versus love is consistently misunderstood. He wasn't advocating cruelty. He was observing that relationships based on what you can do are more stable than relationships based on how people feel. Love, or more broadly, positive feeling, is conditional on you continuing to provide whatever generates that feeling. Stop providing it, the feeling evaporates. The relationship based on it destabilizes. You're constantly performing to maintain the emotional state that maintains the relationship. Fear, more accurately respect for capability, is based on assessment of what you can do. That assessment doesn't require constant refreshing. People don't stop respecting capability just because you haven't demonstrated it recently. The relationship based on it is more stable because it's not dependent on continuous emotional maintenance. This isn't about making people afraid in the sense of terrorizing them. It's about having demonstrated capability that commands respect, regardless of whether people currently feel positively toward you. The distinction matters. Leaders whose authority depends on people liking them have unstable positions. They must constantly manage everyone's feelings. They can't make unpopular decisions without threatening their authority. They're constrained by the need to maintain positive emotional reactions. Leaders whose authority is based on demonstrated capability have stable positions. People respect their ability to affect outcomes regardless of current feelings. They can make unpopular decisions when necessary because their authority isn't dependent on being liked. They're free to operate based on strategic necessity. The same pattern exists in personal relationships. Friendships based entirely on positive feeling are fragile. Any conflict threatens them. Relationships based on mutual respect for capability are resilient. They can handle conflict because the foundation isn't emotional. Professional relationships show this clearly. Colleagues who are liked but not respected have weak influence. Colleagues who are respected but not necessarily liked have strong influence. The former must constantly manage feelings. The latter can focus on results. This doesn't mean being unlikable. It means recognizing that sustainable influence comes from demonstrated capability that commands respect, not from managing everyone's emotional reactions to maintain likability. One is stable. The other requires constant performance. Emotional control matters here because capability-based relationships require you not to need emotional validation. You operate based on strategic effectiveness rather than whether people currently feel good about you. Most communication is defensive. People explain themselves to prevent negative judgment. They clarify intentions to avoid misunderstanding. They elaborate positions to ensure comprehension. This seems helpful until you recognize what it actually accomplishes, providing detailed intelligence about your thinking to anyone listening. Every explanation reveals reasoning process. Every clarification shows what you care about. Every elaboration demonstrates what you think needs defending. You're constantly broadcasting information about your psychology through unnecessary communication. Machiavelli was explicit about this. Speak minimally. Every word is potential intelligence for observers. Every explanation is leverage you're giving away. Every attempt to ensure understanding is information about what you need understood, which reveals what matters to you. Strategic silence doesn't mean never speaking. It means treating communication as valuable resource you spend deliberately rather than automatically. You speak when speaking advances objectives. You remain silent when silence serves better. This is particularly important emotionally. The instinct when emotionally activated is to express, to explain how you feel, to clarify why you're upset, to ensure others understand your emotional state. This instinct works against you strategically. You're providing complete information about your emotional triggers and responses. The alternative is default silence about emotional states. People can wonder how you feel. They can guess what bothers you. They can speculate about what moves you. But you're not confirming or denying. You're maintaining ambiguity that prevents them from reliably using your emotions against you. This applies broadly. When accused, silence often works better than defense. When questioned, minimal response often works better than detailed explanation. When provoked, no reaction often works better than emotional expression. This isn't about being mysterious for its own sake. It's about not volunteering information that doesn't serve your interests. Most people leak intelligence constantly through over-communication. They explain when silence would be stronger. They clarify when ambiguity would be more powerful. They express when opacity would be more strategic. The disciplined approach is treating silence as the default and communication as the exception requiring justification. Will this communication advance my objectives? If no, remain silent. Will this explanation strengthen my position? If no, don't explain. Will this clarification serve my interests? If no, let them wonder. Everything discussed so far might create the impression that strategic emotional management means being closed, cold, or detached. That's not accurate. The objective isn't eliminating emotional expression, it's making emotional expression deliberate rather than automatic. This distinction matters. Automatic emotional expression is vulnerability. You're displaying internal states without choosing to. Deliberate emotional expression is communication. You're revealing what serves your purposes when it serves them. Strategic operators express emotion frequently, but they're choosing when, with whom, and how much to express based on whether that expression advances their objectives. They're not suppressing, they're calibrating. This creates a specific pattern. With trusted people who've earned access to your emotional interior, you can be quite expressive. You've assessed that this person will use information about your emotional states constructively, so revealing them strengthens rather than weakens the relationship. With neutral or untrusted people, you remain relatively opaque. They haven't earned access to your emotional architecture, so you don't provide it. They see curated presentation rather than authentic interior. With adversarial people, you may strategically display calculated emotional responses. Not what you actually feel, but what serves your objectives for them to think you feel. This is strategic deception through emotional expression, making them believe something about your internal state that isn't accurate. Machiavelli would recognize this pattern. Different contexts require different approaches. The art is correctly assessing context and calibrating expression accordingly. Not one approach everywhere, but appropriate approach based on relationship type and strategic objectives. This requires several capabilities working together. First, the ability to separate experience from expression, to feel without automatically displaying. Second, the ability to assess contexts accurately, to determine who's trustworthy and who isn't. Third, the ability to calibrate expression deliberately, to choose what to reveal based on what serves you. Most people have none of these capabilities developed. They express automatically everywhere, don't assess contexts carefully, and never consider strategic calibration. This makes them emotionally transparent in contexts where opacity would serve them better. The developed version isn't emotionless, it's emotionally strategic. You have rich internal experience, you form deep emotional connections with trustworthy people, but you maintain control over what you display and to whom, based on whether that display serves your interests. This is the integration point. Not cold detachment, but warm selectivity. Not eliminating emotion, but managing its communication. Not being closed to everyone, but being appropriately open to selected people while remaining strategically opaque to others. The separation between emotional experience and behavioral expression isn't about becoming less human. It's about becoming less controllable. You feel everything, possibly more intensely than people who express automatically, because you're actually processing emotions rather than just discharging them through immediate expression. What changes is that your feelings stop being broadcast constantly to anyone paying attention. Your emotional architecture becomes private territory that only selected people access. Everyone else gets carefully managed presentation that serves your objectives rather than reveals your interior. This creates strategic advantage across domains. In negotiations, people can't determine your actual level of interest from your behavior. In relationships, people can't manipulate you through emotional triggers they've identified. In competition, opponents can't predict your responses by understanding your emotional patterns. The cost is that this feels less authentic in casual interactions. You're managing presentation rather than expressing freely. You're calibrating communication rather than just reacting. You're thinking about strategic implications rather than just being present. That cost is worth paying in contexts where your interests compete with others' interests, where emotional transparency creates vulnerability, where being readable makes you controllable, which is most contexts outside close personal relationships. Machiavelli operated in environments where everyone was strategic and emotional transparency was fatal. Modern environments are more varied. Some contexts reward authenticity, some punish it. The skill is correctly distinguishing which is which and adjusting approach accordingly. Strategic emotional management isn't one approach applied everywhere. It's appropriate calibration based on context, genuine transparency with trustworthy people, strategic opacity with everyone else, calculated expression when that serves objectives. This flexibility is power. The foundation is developing actual capacity to maintain behavioral control regardless of emotional activation. Without that capacity, all the strategic understanding is just theory you can't implement under pressure. With that capacity, you gain option value. You can choose what to reveal and what to protect based on what serves your interests. You're no longer automatically readable. You've become strategically opaque. Type this commitment: I control what I reveal. If this framework provided value, engage and share. Most people never develop this capacity because it feels less authentic. Their loss becomes your advantage. The ultimate freedom isn't feeling less. It's choosing what others see.